This is the PRS NF53. When this came out last year, it was quite the divisive guitar, with a lot of people liking it and a lot of people really disliking it. I managed to get my hands on this one last year, not long after they came out. You guys may have seen my review video that I did when I first got this one. And while this guitar has only showed up on my YouTube channel a few times, I have done a ton of gigs with this thing over the last year. And I just play this thing at home a ton, and I've used it for a lot of Instagram reels, so I feel like I have a really good sense of what it's like playing this guitar. My first impression of this guitar last year was good, but for today's video, we're gonna revisit the NF53, talk about its pros and cons, and see if it still holds up 1 year later. But real quick before we do that, I wanted to talk about my new course, which is called the Slide Guitar Course Standard Tuning Edition. The course includes over 6 hours of pre-recorded video lessons, as well as PDF downloads, tabs, Guitar Pro files, and backing tracks, which teach you everything you need to know to start playing slide in standard tuning on your regular guitar in a wide variety of musical situations. So you don't have to learn any open tunings, you don't have to relearn the fretboard, or have a guitar that's set up just for playing slide. The course begins with the most basic fundamentals of playing slide, so you don't have to have any experience playing slide whatsoever to do this course, and gradually introduces more and more advanced concepts as it goes along. So intermediate to advanced players still can get something out of it. The course is a one-time purchase that gives you instant access to all of its contents, and it never expires, so you always have access to it. If you want to learn more, then go ahead and check out my course website at the link in the description of this video down below. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this guitar, this is essentially PRS's take on the Telecaster, which is probably obvious by looking at it. It has an ash body, maple neck, 2 of what PRS calls their narrow field deep dish pickups, which are basically mini humbuckers that are voiced to sound like single coils. So they have a single coil-esque sound, but they have no hum. Master volume, master tone, 3-way switch, just like an old Tele. No push-pull pots, no coil splitting or anything like that. Just simple bare bones. 25.5-inch scale length, just like a Fender. And this really cool 2-saddle bridge that is obviously inspired by the vintage Tele 3-saddle bridge. So if you watched my video on this last year, then you'll know that PRS gave me this guitar. So full disclaimer, I did not pay for this thing, but they did not pay me to make that first video. They didn't pay me to make this video. They didn't ask me to make any videos on it whatsoever. When PRS reached out to me, the deal was try it out. If you like it, then keep it and play it. Simple as that. No other strings attached. I promise you guys, I'm not the type of person to promote gear on my channel that I don't genuinely like and actually use. I've had companies send me pedals, guitars, all kinds of stuff that I've sent back because it wasn't for me. I know that still isn't going to convince everyone. Some people are still going to think I'm shilling for PRS, but still, just keep that in mind while you watch this. So in a nutshell, I like this guitar a lot. The NF53 has become one of my go-to guitars for gigging especially. To sum up my reasons for that, it is essentially a lightweight, super comfortable, super easy to play, versatile guitar that gets the Tele kind of spirit while being more comfortable for someone who's used to playing Gibson-style guitars. So I love traditional Telecasters. This is my parts caster that I've had for years, and it's had multiple different iterations, but essentially it's as vintage Tele as it possibly can get. Traditional Teles are one of my favorite guitar models of all time, and arguably the best electric guitar design of all time. The amount of things you can do with this guitar with the simplest of layouts is just the greatest thing ever. I just love it so much. But I primarily grew up playing Les Pauls, SGs, Gibson-style guitars, so there will always be something that feels a little bit foreign about this to me. And this guitar essentially has the same basic layout as a Tele, but it has a wider nut width, more like a Gibson. It has a little bit higher output pickups than a traditional Tele. They're not as hot as, say, a PAF or a vintage style P90, but they have just a little extra juice for someone who is used to humbuckers and P90s to get along with this guitar a little bit more. It doesn't feel quite so weak and wimpy compared to a vintage style Telecaster. And you know, you may just say, well, why don't you just put hotter pickups in your Tele? Well, anytime I've tried that, they just kind of sound muddy and too bassy and Tele pickups just, to me, they need to be in that more vintage output level to sound good, whereas this has more punch than a traditional Tele pickup without sounding boomy to me. So the wider nut width, the pickups, and just the overall playability of PRS guitars makes this a more enjoyable experience for me, being more of a Gibson kind of guy, playing a Tele style instrument. Tone wise, it can get pretty close to that traditional Tele thing. Again, if you're a complete Tele purist, then it's not going to be 100% there. It has a little bit of that PRS kind of sheen on it, but it's still super versatile and has, again, that spirit of the Telecaster sound. Here's a really quick rapid fire comparison of tones between this and my traditional Tele. So as you can hear, the tone of this is obviously inspired by the Tele, but it's not identical. This has its own thing going on. And what I like about it in particular is I can get a nice big fat lead tone, particularly by having it on the bridge pickup, volume on 10, tone knob rolled back about halfway, and you get this. Which that is a totally acceptable lead sound for me. But then all I have to do to get a nice, clean, sparkly Tele-esque sound is just turn the volume knob down, turn the tone knob all the way up, and then I get this. Just between those three pickup positions and blending in different amounts of the volume knob and the tone knob, you can get such a wide palette of tones, again, without having to have any sort of push-pull pots, coil split, any of that stuff, which I personally am not a fan of. I like having it as simple as possible, just regular old knobs, three-way switch, nothing else. So for all of those reasons, this guitar is one that I can just throw in a gig bag, grab an amp, go to a gig with no other guitar, and feel perfectly comfortable that I'm going to get all of the tones that I need, that this guitar is going to perform how it needs to, it's going to be comfortable, it's going to play well, and it's just going to do everything I need it to do in one super simple package. And so in those respects, I genuinely believe the NF53 is one of PRS's best models. It's my favorite model of theirs personally. I love the 594s and all of those types of guitars. The Silver Sky is great, but this is the one that I feel like I connect with the most out of all of the PRSs that I've tried. Around the same time that I got mine, Danish Pete from Andertons bought one of these as well, and we were messaging back and forth on Instagram about it, and he said something that I think perfectly sums up this guitar, which, to paraphrase, was, out of all of PRS's models, the NF53 is the most player guitar out of all of them. And what I took that to mean was, this is the guitar that the most guitarists can use in the most situations and not feel like they're missing out on anything. Essentially, this could be a lot of players' one guitar that they use for almost everything. So this whole video up to this point has been pretty much me just gushing over this guitar because I genuinely think it is a fantastic, underrated model by PRS. So what are the cons of this thing? Honestly, I think the only con is the aesthetic of the guitar, the look of it. Personally, I don't mind the look of this guitar. I think it looks cool. It is different, it is funky, but if you look at the body shape, objectively speaking, this is a super tasteful design, a super tasteful take on the traditional Tele shape. And I think overall, it just needs to be seen in person to be fully appreciated. It looks better in person than it does in pictures. That being said, I understand why some people don't like the way this guitar looks. It is very PRS aesthetically, which Again, I don't mind the PRS aesthetic. I think their designs are tasteful for the most part, but this is about as PRS as a Tele could possibly be. The main things that I think are pushing people away from this guitar aesthetically are, for one, the pickguard. I don't think it's awful, but it's not my favorite pickguard design. I mean, it goes with the shape of the guitar, and I'm not saying I could design a better pickguard shape for this, but I can see just some people not being into it. Some people just don't like the PRS headstock, especially the fact that it's a 3x3 tuner setup on a Fender-inspired guitar. Again, I don't mind it. I like this shape, and of course, they're never going to change their core headstock shape, but I can still see that pushing some people away. So those are factors, but if there were two main things that I would suggest PRS do with this model, they would be, for one, offer this with a rosewood fretboard. There are a lot of people out there who just don't like the look and feel of a maple fretboard on any guitar. So I think offering a rosewood fretboard option would look amazing and bring a lot more people on board with this guitar. And even though I already dig the look of this guitar, I would love to have this exact thing just with a rosewood fretboard. I think that would look so sick. Second, I think PRS should offer this guitar in more colors, and specifically silver sky colors, or at least similar to the silver sky with metallics and solid colors. Out of the colors that they already offer for this guitar, I think the sunburst and the solid black are probably the most appealing to the most people, and I do think those look good. Personally, I really like this white dog hair color because to me it's like a modern take on your classic Fender white blonde, which is probably my favorite Fender color. But I can see how this color, the black dog hair, and especially the blue color, I'm really not a fan of that one. I can see how those can be off-putting to some people. So I feel like if they offered this guitar, again, with a rosewood fretboard and with some metallic colors, maybe with a white pickguard instead of black, make it a little bit more traditional Fender leaning, which again, they've done before with the silver sky, so it's not out of the question for them. I think if they just nudge it a little bit more traditional, then a lot more people are going to be on board with this guitar. And I think they should, because more people need to be playing this guitar. I genuinely think it's a fantastic instrument. It's just the aesthetic of it is turning a lot of people off. And a lot of people are also saying things like, oh, I would never spend that much on a Tele. And, you know, if that's really the case for you, then fine, don't buy it. But I would be willing to bet a lot of people out there who are saying stuff like that would not bat an eye at buying a $4,000 custom shop Fender Telecaster. Same thing for a lot of the boutique Tele-inspired guitars. So many of them are well beyond the $3,000 price range, and you rarely hear people complaining about those. And to me, as someone who loves vintage guitars, custom shop guitars, boutique guitars, and so on, the quality and experience of playing this guitar are on par with anything at this price range, if not better. Still, I do recognize that this guitar is out of a lot of people's price range regardless, so I think it would be amazing if PRS does an SE version of this guitar. The SE Silver Sky has been a huge success for them, so I think if they give a similar treatment to this model and again make it maybe just a little more traditional looking, then this guitar will really take off, and again, I think it deserves to. So that does it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think of the NF53, whether you've tried one or if you own one. If you haven't tried one, then I would definitely recommend it, and especially if you're a naysayer, then play this thing before you pass judgment on it. Don't forget to check out my new course, the Slide Guitar Course Standard Tuning Edition, at the link in the description down below. If you could please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon to get notified whenever I post new videos, that will help out my channel a lot. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.